Quantum Break, originally released 2016, made by Remedy and also published by Microsoft, so they own the IP. But interesting enough is the fact that one, the name of the game is Quantum Break, as opposed to previous titles like Max Payne and Alan Wake being named after their titular main characters, or also the fact that they had many ideas for this game for selling and what they have, such as originally supposed to be 4 playable characters. In the final product, there's 1.5 because calling it 2 is too generous. And it's interesting how the fact that when it came to even trailers for this game, they didn't even show off who the antagonist of the game even was, because they haven't even set that actually yet into place, so they weren't even sure yet. Quantum Break revolves around time travel, and so there were ideas they had that got scrapped, such as wanting the players to be able to alter their choices at any time by immediately going into the past, or having 4 playable characters, or even having the ability to essentially make time duplicates of your character for more strategic combat. All that got scrapped because 1, it's too complicated. 3, giving the player the ability to just alter the events at any time would mean the story would be a confusing nightmare. And like I mentioned, these switching elements of being able to manipulate basically multiple different versions of yourself was also scrapped because they're trying to make an action game, not a strategy game. So just interesting, a lot of stuff that got scrapped before we got to the final product that is Quantum Break. The main premise is that our main character Jack Joyce gets called in by his best friend Paul, not only to oversee this time machine experiment, but to convince Jack's brother William, who actually was on board with making a time machine, but later thought that messing with time is too risky and will cause so many problems. William tries to shut down the experiment when they're operating it, but then the company Monarch, who's been suspiciously buying up all the properties in the entire neighborhood, also raised the university in order to stop them, causing Paul to escape to the future, Jack to get covered in Chronon particles, also to manipulate time, and now causing fractures in time that will potentially end the world if not stopped. Paul comes back from the future, a completely changed man who believes that the future cannot be changed no matter what. Everything that happens will happen. All humanity can do is prepare for the inevitable, but they cannot stop it. William claims he has a method to stop it, but Paul refuses to listen and ends up killing William, not leaving Jack, in an attempt to not only follow William's plan to try and prevent a disaster, but also not go after his best friend, who's now just become a villain who believes that all you can do is prepare for the inevitable. He believes that humanity must be ready for the end of time and that you can't stop it. Just from that description, you can tell there's a lot going on considering the time travel narrative, but also this game from the first 40 minutes is just setup. It's just you walking around with Paul, taking in all the information on the experiment, all these details, and this game uses time travel is the idea that everything that happens is set. The idea that you cannot change the future, all you can do is essentially cause it to happen in a different form, or you may accidentally be the reason it happens to begin with. With Jack believing that's BS and wants to believe that the future can change and that he could potentially also save his brother who died in front of him. An interesting aspect in the narrative is that there are points where you control Paul and actually have to decide on one of 2 future outcomes based on a choice you make, with there being pros and cons shown for them. Like, for example, the first major one is, hey, do you let these protesters make this false statement, but also let them live, but at the cost that they could help Jack and end up screwing over Paul? Or do you kill the protester so Jack doesn't get his information? But the downside is, this is a PR disaster for Monarch, with Paul actually turning out to be the creator of Monarch his entire time, so the company that was shooting him was the company that he actually later found, and time travel's amazing, ain't it? Now, despite these choices, the main narrative plays out the same. The only difference is the details. But interesting enough, some of the bigger ones, there's the fact of you can change this character who assists Jack between 1 or 2 characters. Their role will remain the same, but the personalities are entirely different. And interesting enough, one of the characters you can get is one of the 4 scrap playable characters that they had in mind for Quantum Break. So interesting to see that they're now an optional character that has been repurposed into this role. But I said the main narrative will not change, despite how some of the things that you can change shouldn't be drastic. I gotta say this, you can actually alter Paul's motivations based on your choices, but it doesn't really matter since the conclusion of the game is still the same and how he acts is still the same, even if what he's going for you can change. None of this also alters the gameplay, aside from one segment that I'm not even gonna count as really altering the gameplay in the slightest. But the main changes are for the Quantum Break TV show, which are 4 25-minute long episodes that are filmed in live action that play after every act of the game. And oh boy, I didn't think I had to review a TV show, but here we are. Quantum Break, the TV show, plays after each of the acts of the game and plays with a perspective of Liam and Charlie, who are 2 employees of Monarch. But the problem with the show is, when it comes to talk about the game, it barely does. Your choices essentially amount to maybe 1 to 2 minutes of the live action show altering. The game tells you there are quantum ripples you can cause, which will change the show, but it is very minor. Like, maybe someone will notice some background detail, and that's about it. Like, it doesn't even matter. Like I said, the choices the player makes barely affects the TV show. It only amounts to maybe 1 to 2 scenes being different, because the main focus is not on the stuff the player is doing. The main focus is on these main characters for the show, Liam and Charlie, which are okay characters, but they're not exactly interesting, and since they don't really affect the game much, like, you can find emails from them within the game itself, but when it comes to this whole entire 25-minute per episode show of 4 episodes that y'all effing made for this game, it really doesn't add anything to the game itself, and the choices, since they're so minor, don't matter either. So you made an entire show for this game that just doesn't really do anything for the game part of it. On top of the fact that the show is being streamed to you, which means there could be issues, such as when I was watching the first episode, there was a point where it had to buffer for a bit, and at one point where the quality dropped the resolution dramatically for a scene. So that's on top of the issue that it's being streamed to you. And as for the quality of the show, it ends up making things seem pretty inconsistent with the game itself, because the enemies that Jack is supposed to be struggling with, and he has time powers, are easily dispatched within the TV show to an absurd degree, to the point where you have enemies that are equipped with Chronon technology to allow them to go through time similar to Jack, and they get easily taken out by a guy who doesn't even have that equipment. It's like, they just look pathetic, and they don't really show much of them, probably because the effects to do that would be way too expensive. So you don't get much of the actual time travel abilities and powers within a live action show itself, even when it should be relevant to it. As for the actual quality and narrative of the show, it's okay. Like, Charlie and Liam are fine protagonists, but none of them are as interesting as what's going on in the main narrative. Like, these characters we're following for the show, they're not Martin Hatch who's more interesting, they're not Beth Wilder who's more interesting, they're not Jack and Paul who are more interesting, so having these two essentially lead the show is just such a weird choice, especially when their contributions to the actual video game part of Quantum Break is so minor to the point where you can pretty much just alter if they even matter to the story at all. This whole idea of trying to quote-unquote add humanity to Monarch doesn't really do much when Paul himself, despite how much of an a-hole he's acting, does want to help humanity in the end. He just thinks that his method is the only way that works. So we're adding humanity to a villain group that already has humanity. That's the weird part of the whole entire live action show's existence. It's redundant, and with the characters you're using, they don't really affect the game much, so they have no reason to really be here. I already get enough from them from the emails I find in the game, and by God, do characters in this game not know how to freaking get to the point in their emails. And just feels redundant to have this entire show that had to be costly, even if it isn't as high budget as the actual game itself. It's just so weird decision to make an entire TV show like this. And it's to the point where some people rather just watch the show on YouTube because, like I said, the buffering issues you have when it could have when watching it actually in game is so annoying that they rather just watch on YouTube. Hell, when I first played Quantum Break years ago, I actually had an issue where one of the episodes just didn't work. It just didn't work at all. My 25-minute long cutscene didn't work. Overall, when it comes to the Quantum Break TV show, if this came out in the 2010s, you probably get 2 seasons. If this came out nowadays, you get canceled midway through. That's the quality of a show. Like, it's just not that interesting, and since the focus is supposed to be Quantum Break the game and the main narrative, the TV show just doesn't really serve much of a purpose at all to the actual game, so let's just get back to the game. Overall, I do like the story of Quantum Break, the game, not the TV show, because the characters they have are interesting. I like Beth Wilder, I like Jack, I like Paul, I like Martin Hatch, even if Martin Hatch is more so in the show than the game, but the choices you make in the game as Paul just don't really matter much in the grand scheme of things when it comes to Quantum Break. So the idea of replaying the game just for these choices, and that's what this playthrough is. This is me playing through the game, doing the other choices I didn't do initially, just doesn't affect much since the main narrative stays the same, and even if some details change, things will still play out the same. Maybe it's a way of highlighting the game's idea that the future can't be changed no matter what you do, and all you can do is just end up walking towards that fate. Or maybe believe in Jack Joyce and believe that fate and destiny are bullshit. Who knows? Also, weirdly, not really an issue, but there's one moment where there is a note or a diary you can read written by a character, but the character who wrote it is nearby the diary, and the cutscene starts as if Jack didn't just read this diary. I know it's optional and everything, but it's the one instance where they weirdly have a note and the person who wrote the note next to it, and then have the cutscene explaining information the note just said. And it's like, that's a weird decision. Like I said, that's only one instance. Every other email and note you read in this game are by characters who generally are more prominent in a live action show, or they're by characters like Paul who are nowhere near you. The main gameplay of Quantum Break is a third-person shooter where you automatically go into cover just by being near it, which is pretty handy, doesn't need a dedicated button, but your main thing are the Chronon powers, with your abilities such as being able to freeze a spot in time, which not only stops enemies from moving, but also allows you to just create a spot where you can just shoot a bunch of bullets and have all the bullets fire and hit at multiple enemies at once if you aim it properly. You also have a dodge that, despite being a dodge, can be used offensively, since if you dodge towards an enemy, Jack will actually push them over, and you have a brief moment where time is slowed down and you can fire more precise shots. I love that ability, I use that one the most. There are also other abilities, such as a time blast, which is an explosion, which I swear doesn't do much to your enemies, but you also have one that's like a time rush, which allows you to just run whilst time is slowed down and get melee attacks. You also have a time bubble that allows you to heal within it, but you get upgrades to where if you use it on top of an enemy, they will be slowed down within the bubble, so all your defense options can also be used offensively. A cool detail is also the fact that because your movement abilities is going through time, if you were to dodge or rush out of an enemy's sight line, to their perspective, you just vanish, and now they start not knowing where you are and need to look for you again, which is a cool way of getting a jump on people by just dodging all around them, and they just don't know where you are. And the power they make you feel in this game is so much fun. The only downside to these powers is that it makes Jack completely overpowered from the get-go. Even if you play on hard mode, the amount of ways you can just stop enemies from doing anything or immediately just dodge all around and attack them is so good that even on hard mode, it's not that difficult at all. I've been playing this game twice, only on hard mode. You can get through the encounters pretty quickly. Even the big enemies they introduce that take more damage, if I can just dodge all around them perfectly, I mean, they don't really do much to me at all. Like, I think I got some footage where the game introduced a new enemy type, and its whole purpose is to be a big tank, soak up damage, be the big brute, take the heat off of all his other dudes. He dies fast! And it's like, this is the big defense guy. I mentioned earlier, you have people who start using Chronon technology in order to not only match Jack, but also be able to fight Jack during these fractures where all time is paused. But these guys go down as easily as everyone else, so they're not higher defense, they just move fast, but doesn't mean much when you're moving just as fast as them. There are some enemies that have the ability to take away Jack's powers, but one, they're in the form of easily avoidable grenades, and two, they're in the form of these little cones, these little bubbles that, so long as you're not near the enemy, the bubble will never touch you because it's just a small bubble. They're kind of pathetic. There are two instances I can think of where entire rooms will remove your abilities. Okay, let me just shoot the dudes from outside the bubble and then deactivate it. Or immediately blind to deactivate it because the enemies are kind of stupid and for some reason don't notice me doing that. So the enemies just don't stand a chance. There is some variety in them, but they just don't really add much to them, and none of them have the full scale of power that Jack does. Then there's also the final boss fight, which I won't spoil, but it is also pathetically easy and is mostly just you fighting more wizard enemies, and that's it. I've seen so many comments saying the final boss is really difficult, impossibly hard. What are you actually doing? It is actually pathetically easy and doesn't ask much of the player at all. Like, that boss fight is so easy that I was baffled to see a whole bunch of comments of people thinking the final boss was impossibly difficult and just looking up the game's ending. But like, the boss fight is just pathetic. Not help that there are certain story moments where they do bring the idea of a potential threat that could be even more powerful than Jack, that would be interesting gameplay wise to face at least once just to see the scale of it. But you never get to. It's solely a thing for the story and the cutscenes. It's like, no, that would have been super cool to at least get to fight one of those things. Give me your best, man. I'm dying for engagement here. So despite how amazing it feels to play as Jack, it's so much fun, the enemies just don't stand a chance, and a variety of enemies start blending together because while there is variety in them, they don't really have much to actually offer as opponents. I mean, there is fun where they do try to have multiple of these enemy types in one locale, but then they'll have moments where, fracture, so the non-Chronon guys will just now be frozen in time. And it's like, oh, now it's just a purely fighting Chronon guys fight. Great. Fantastic. Why are we ruining interesting ideas here for combat? The other thing they'll be doing is platforming, strangely enough, where you'll have moments in the platform. It's not difficult, and you always have a button with time vision to be able to not only know which way to go, but also be able to find these Chronon sources, which are essentially skill points that you use to get upgrades. And I'm not gonna lie, these Chronon sources, they are probably the most difficult things to get in the game, depending on some of them. Some of them are out in the open, some of them require you to go out of the way and do some bit of platforming in order to get to them, which is enjoyable, and I do like that aspect, but I'm not gonna lie, I feel like they have the most effort you have to put in order to actually go around them. There's also this one ability that only exists in the story where Jack has the ability to rewind entire events in order to pretty much alter something to use to get a path forward. It would have been cool to do something similar in gameplay to people, but no, you can only do it for these specific story moments. There's this weird quirk in the game where the gameplay is at 60 FPS and runs smoothly, but when you enter a small cutscene, the game will then go into 30 FPS, and it has to transition between the two. When it's a transition back to proper gameplay, it does not transition gracefully, because for a few seconds, your controls and everything will be at 30 FPS before it goes back to 60 FPS, and it has this weird quirk where once a cutscene starts, so it's about to end, you can move the camera, but the game will violently put the camera back to where the cutscene's facing, so it gives you control, but not really, because it still wants you to look at a certain thing, and then the camera starts awkwardly fidgeting because of it. When it comes to actual exploration, like I said, there's emails to find, so many of them, my god, they're so long. Can y'all get to the point of your emails? Oh my god, who the hell writes entire essays for their goddamn emails? What the hell? But there are also fun Easter eggs you can find. Like, you can find the return film that is a little Easter egg to Alan Wake.
The light of the flashlight smiles a wicked, spicy lies in the blood of a
Hell, you can actually find an NPC during a fracture playing Alan Wake, and I found one moment where there was NPCs who were actually quoting Alan Wake, another NPC not knowing that's an Alan Wake quote, going, hey, it's a quote from a thing you won't understand. And it's just fun things like that you can find in the game world. Although, I have been told that Quantum Break is not part of the Remedy universe, probably because it's on my Microsoft, so I want to deal with the legal hassle of trying to include Quantum Break into their whole entire universe of games. The gameplay of Quantum Break is good, it's fun, but it just needs enemies that are more up to your level to keep it actually engaging, keep you hooked, give you an opponent that will make you go, oh, there's a mother F boss fight, hell yeah! You get none of that, sadly, because enemies are generally just so easy for Jack to take out, and the final boss is just so pathetic that, like, there's nothing that can really match up to Jack and his abilities with the Chronon powers. Now to mention when it comes to the UI. Not the UI itself, but the menus being god-awful. Because Quantum Break's main colors are essentially the colors of Monarch, being white and yellow, the menu screens are blatantly white. They constantly destroy your retinas every single time you pause in order to go to the menu to research your notes, or to unlock new abilities using your skill points essentially, and it's just so awful. And because the other main color is yellow, they do sometimes, but not always strangely, do use yellow in order to try and guide the player. But there's also, you can also hit the buttons on your objective, and you have time vision to also tell you the right direction, so it seems kind of redundant. And like I said, there are points where they don't have yellow to highlight the path forward, so it feels weird how they had the idea of matching the color of path forward with Monarch's color scheme, but then don't really do much with it, and the menus being violently white are just awful and need to be stopped. Even getting near the freaking Chronon sources can be so bright it hurts at sometimes. So I just wish the game wasn't so blinding with the use of the color white. It should have been dimmed down, my god. The game's text being white is honestly the most baffling decision for it they could possibly pick in this game, since the main colors are white and yellow like Monarch, so that text gets unbelievably lost in everything. It's such a baffling idea that someone thought, when your main color is already white, why then have white text for your subtitles? And it's just a whole entire weird decision I don't know why they went with when it came to the text color for subtitles in this game. Like, you know what your main color of the game is, why make it match the same color as the subtitles? That's just nonsensical. I also noticed some errors when it comes to the subtitles. Specifically, there are some instances where the subtitle will have the character's first name based on their last name, like how Jack will call Paul Paul, but Monarch people will call him Serene by last name. But then there are times where it will say Paul but they say Serene. Sometimes in a character who's a doctor, that they'll say her first name instead the character's using her last name, kind of thing. And there was one aspect where there was a typo, but nothing major comes to the subtitles being an issue. It's more the fact of sometimes it may say the wrong thing, but nothing major, just say the wrong name and the one typo. I also want to say visually, when it comes to the fracture everything, they look so damn cool and amazing. Although I don't like the time vision, because when this game looks good, amazing, especially during the fractures, why have time vision that completely mutes the colors in order to try and highlight specific key things? I get it. You want to use it to highlight stuff like, oh, here's a blue object thing helpful, like a gun or ammo, red for the enemy. But when your game looks so good and everything, I don't want to mute the colors in order to use his ability, which you will use a lot, because time vision is also needed to find Chronon sources, not only to reveal them, but also because it tells you if there's one nearby, so you will be hitting that time vision button a lot as a result. And in order to sometimes reveal stuff for Jack to rewind, you need to use time vision first. So there's just plenty of stuff where time vision will just mute the visuals, and this game looks so good. Why do that? Why? Overall, I like Quantum Break when I first played it, and I still enjoy it. The disappointment comes from the fact of you're so overpowered that you can practically do ring around the roads and enemies. Hell, sometimes I actually did ring around the roads and enemies, kind of thing. So Just the fact that you're so powerful that it can become dull because nothing is a threat to you, despite how cool and unique and inventive the gameplay is with the Chronon powers. The use of time travel, they do keep it consistent with what they're doing and the theory of time travel that they're using. So that's also extra good to dial back the scale of the game, in which the focus keeping the time travel consistent with the narrative in very cool and unique ways that when I first played it actually caught me off guard how they kept some things consistent. And close to the story, like I said, it's a good story for the game, not for the TV show. You have to watch the TV show because they do give some details that are continuations from the game, but that's only about maybe 1 or 2 minutes in the episode. The rest of it is just fully watching the characters of Liam and Charlie doing their whole entire thing, and how it might at some point affect what Jack is doing down the road, kind of thing. I just wish that the TV show either focused more on the game or it was just more interesting, considering, like I said, they're 25-minute episodes, man. And know that the people who made it are proud of it, with Sam Lake saying he wishes they could do a season 2 of the Quantum Break TV show and also do a sequel to the game, which this game does have a sequel hook, which is an interesting hook, but despite apparently putting Microsoft selling above expectations, they never agreed on a sequel, which is a shame because the sequel could make this game really shine if they have more interesting enemies, and I know the sequel will have more interesting enemies and it will be cool. But why tease me? Like I said, Quantum Break is good, just wish it was better, and I wish Microsoft would agree on a sequel. So I gotta say, alright then, good day.